What's up mga kuya? Welcome back to the channel. So this is the Xiaomi POCO X3 Pro. See, that's the thing, I'm not sure if I'm just going to call this the POCO X3 Pro since I'm not sure if POCO is already an independent company from Xiaomi. Yeah, I'm just gonna call this the Xiaomi POCO X3 Pro. And this is the fastest and best performing smartphone for under $300 US. And with the X3 Pro, POCO has basically raise the standard for what a mid-range smartphone should offer these days. And the main focus of this is speed, so Snapdragon 860, which is basically like a binned or overclock version of the Snapdragon 855 Plus, super fast UFS 3.1 storage, 120Hz display with a 240Hz sampling rate, and 33 watts of fast charging. And for the MSRP of $12,990 here in the Philippines, like just on these specs alone, it's already a steal. But of course, here's the full spec list. You guys can just pause the video. And if you guys want to watch my unboxing and first impressions of this, then you can check it out here. So I've been using this for 1 week now, and here are my thoughts. And regarding actually the 5 pillars of a great smartphone, as you know, I've been mentioning that in my previous smartphone reviews just recently. But I feel like for the past couple of years, mid-range to even budget smartphones are starting to hit those 5 pillars of a great smartphones for their respective price segments. So in this case, instead of it being a checklist, I'm going to grade them from an F, which is poop, all the way to an S, which is excellent. So I was able to buy this at Shopee for the early bird price of $10,990 from the MSRP of $12,990. But I feel like it's not really called an early bird price, and that's going to be its price when it's on sale. But the regular MSRP is still that $12,990, so you guys don't really need to worry about if you're going to buy this late. Like, this will be regularly on sale for $10,990, so yeah. And take note that everything that I'm gonna say that I don't like about the X3 Pro is basically me just nitpicking at that point. Like, those nitpicks are not justified. So let's start off with build quality. So you have Corning Gorilla Glass 6 at the front, plastic back, metal frame, and one thing that POCO actually didn't mention is if the sides of the POCO X3 or the frame is actually metal or aluminum. Although I think the sides of the X3 Pro is actually metal, it feels like metal, and overall build quality is just solid. I'm giving it a solid A. Even though the back is plastic, it's still great overall. Plus, there's a rubber layer in between the frame and display glass, which should help with impact absorption in the event that you drop your phone. And also, the Xiaomi POCO X3 Pro is IP53 certified, so even though it has an IP rating, take note it's IP53. It's not IP67 or 68, just like with the more expensive mid-range phones or even with high-end flagships. Basically, you can use this in the rain or in the shower, but not submerge it underwater. Take note. And regarding the design, so you have the USB Type-C charging port at the bottom along with the 3.5mm headphone jack, main microphone, and bottom speaker grill. At the left side, you have the SIM card tray. At the top, you have the IR blaster, secondary noise cancelling microphone, and a single hole for the top speaker grill. And at the right side, you have the volume rockers along with the power button / fingerprint scanner. And I actually really like the design or aesthetics of the fingerprint scanner on the POCO X3 Pro. So it has an indent here so you can easily fill it if you want to unlock your phone, and the power button is actually flat, which I prefer more if you're going to put a side-mounted fingerprint scanner on a smartphone compared to the convex design on the POCO F3. And yeah, the side-mounted fingerprint scanner on this is fast and accurate for the most part. At the front, at the top middle part, we have the hole punch for the 20-megapixel front-facing camera, earpiece speaker grill, which also works as a loudspeaker alongside the top speaker grill. And one cool thing here is that POCO was actually able to put an LED indicator in the earpiece, so very nice touch there. And at the back, we have the POCO branding here along with the sizable camera bump housing the quad camera setup along with the single LED flash. And for me, I actually don't mind this camera bump. It's still a camera bump. I don't like it. I just don't mind it. It feels like more like it's not too in your face, and actually I would describe it as minimalistic compared to other camera bumps from other smartphones. So in terms of design, POCO didn't really actually change anything from the original POCO X3, and I don't mind it. So one way to differentiate the X3 Pro from the original X3 is through the back. So it has like this gradient finish on the phantom black color option that I have, and the sides on the back have a matte finish to them, which leads me to one thing that I don't like about the design on the POCO X3 Pro. Yeah, they made this part a matte finish, so why not make the entire back a matte finish. Like they left this middle part a glossy finish, and as you know, I'm not a fan of that. So if you're going to put a plastic back on a phone, please make it a matte finish. Not just with POCO, Xiaomi, but with every manufacturer, every company that's putting plastic backs on smartphones. And another thing that I don't like about the design is that the sides of the phone are shiny, glossy, just a fingerprint magnet. Of course, along with that middle part of the back. So yeah. And moving on to the display, so we have a 6.67-inch IPS LCD with a 120Hz refresh rate and a 240Hz sampling rate. So it's a great display, but it's not a gorgeous display. So as someone who has been spoiled by an AMOLED display on the Xiaomi Redmi Note 10 Pro, this kind of feels like a step down. Like it's still a great display for 50 nits of max brightness, so it's still plenty viewable outdoors even under direct sunlight, and colors are relatively neutral. So again, it's a great display but not a gorgeous display. So still, I would give the display of the X3 Pro an A, since it still has a 120Hz refresh rate and a 240Hz sampling rate. And moving on to the cameras on the X3 Pro, so this is actually something that POCO didn't really focus on too much on their launch. This is actually a surprisingly good camera system for a mid-range phone. So pictures taken in the default photo mode have good detail, good colors that aren't oversaturated, and surprisingly good dynamic range. Even pictures taken in low light are respectable for the most part. But turning on night mode, then you get really impressive low light shots. To be honest, I was actually expecting the cameras on the X3 Pro to be bad, but it's surprisingly good. Not great, but good. And you also get decent 4K stabilized video here. And also, pictures taken on the 20 megapixel front-facing camera are also good, and you can record up to 1080p at 30 fps. Okay, so this is like the vlog test for the POCO X3 Pro at 1080p at 30 fps with video stabilization turned on. And for the most part, it does a really good job in stabilizing the video. So take note, this is a handheld shot, so yeah. Lower your volume. And actually, if you're gonna look at the main sensor on the X3 Pro, it's actually a 48 megapixel sensor as compared to the 64 megapixel sensor on the X3 NFC. Now, if you look on paper, it's a downgrade, but in reality, it's not. Again, it takes surprisingly good pictures and videos for a mid-range smartphone. So yeah, I would give the cameras on the Xiaomi POCO X3 Pro a solid B+. And moving on to the main focus of the Xiaomi POCO X3 Pro, and that's performance. Genshin Impact. So this is running on MIUI 12 on top of Android 11, and with that Snapdragon 860, UFS 3.1 storage, and a super smooth 120Hz refresh rate, the X3 Pro just flies through the OS, like opening, closing apps, multitasking, and even playing the most demanding game, which is, I believe, Genshin Impact, isn't a problem for the X3 Pro. Plus, combined with POCO's liquid cool technology 1.0 plus, the X3 Pro doesn't overheat. The phone does still get hot, but not to the point that it would be uncomfortable for the user to hold. So in terms of performance, this is just a flagship experience for under $300, which is insane. And just for comparison's sake, the Snapdragon 860 performs almost the same as with last gen's Snapdragon 865, which is again insane. And take note, this is me running Genshin Impact on the highest settings at 60 fps. And the dual stereo speakers here are really good, nice and loud, but the top speaker grill, or the left speaker grill if you're holding it in landscape mode, is significantly weaker compared to the bottom speaker grill. Not by a lot, but significant enough that I was able to notice it. So yeah. Speaker test. So performance on the Xiaomi POCO X3 Pro is an S. Excellent. Especially for a mid-range smartphone, so really great stuff from POCO. And lastly is battery life. So the X3 Pro has a 5160 mAh battery, so this is easily a 2-day battery life for most people. But if you're someone like me with a medium to heavy use, so that's a combination of social media, YouTube, some gaming, and picture taking, then expect to get an average of 6 hours of screen on time with about 30% left by the end of the day. And one thing that I actually tried here with the battery is play Genshin Impact on the highest settings at 60 fps, and I was able to get a little over 3 hours of screen on time before hitting 12% by lunchtime. But of course, if you are going to be playing less demanding games at 30 FPS, then expect to get significantly better battery life with around 7 to 8 hours of continuous use. And if you do manage to kill it before the end of the day, then you can charge this from 0 to 100 in just 1 hour and 5 minutes with the included 33 watt fast charger. So very nice. So overall battery on the X3 Pro is an S, so excellent. So even though POCO bragged on the performance and gaming on the X3 Pro, this is honestly and surprisingly a complete package. Or again, if you just want the fastest and best performing smartphone for under $300 US, or maybe you're just a performance enthusiast who just wants flagship level performance for not a flagship price, then the POCO X3 Pro is an easy choice, like a no-brainer even for the MSRP of $12,990. Although if you were thinking of getting the 8GB variant of the POCO X3 Pro, then just get the POCO F3, the base version of the POCO F3, which for me is like the best mid-range smartphone in terms of overall value. So yeah, POCO has basically raised the standard for what a mid-range smartphone should offer these days. Of course, if you guys want to buy this, then I'll leave the links in the description and pinned comments of this video. And in my next video, I'm actually going to be comparing the Xiaomi POCO X3 Pro to the Xiaomi Redmi Note 10 Pro, so stay tuned for that. Of course, if you want to see that, then be subscribed and turn on notifications if you haven't already. So yeah, that's gonna do it for my review on the Xiaomi POCO X3 Pro. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this and found this video helpful. Of course, as always, stay safe mga kuya. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.